Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show. Excuse me. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I am on my break. So, I am living it large up in here today. I am here with the amazing Kristie Burk, and we will be talking. We're going all in on blended learning. Uh, for those of you who have our jobs, you know that there's one thing for you to introduce a learning management system into a district. There's one thing for you to introduce tools, and there's another thing for you to actually create a culture in which not only can this thing grow, but become sustainable and scalable. And that's the work that Kristie is doing, that we're all trying to do. And that's what we'll be talking about today, about how do you create a blended learning culture within your school or a set of schools. So Kristie, for those who are watching the show, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm not on vacation yet, so I'm still here at work. I work for the Downingtown Area School District, and we are a suburb of Philadelphia, and we have about 13,000 students and about 990, close to 1,000 teachers. It's a public school. And my job, I'm the coordinator of cyber and blended learning, and my job is to have a blended program for all of our high school students. And we define blended here in Downingtown as students spending 50% of the time online and 50% of the time face-to-face.
Awesome. So what critical steps must be taken to move a school or district towards a blended learning environment? And what are some of the challenges you have encountered with the work that you do?
It's a great question. So I think the most important thing is teacher professional development. I think that it's really essential to have teachers that feel confident, they feel prepared, they understand the pedagogy of blended learning, and they are ready when those students start in their blended classes. So here in Downingtown, when a teacher volunteers to teach a blended class, he or she will have a full year of professional development before they actually teach that class. And then once they start teaching that class, then they have another year of professional development to support them while they're trying it out for the first time. I think that addresses one of the challenges, which is teachers are reluctant to want to do this because it is really different for many of them. They're used to seeing their students, at least here in our school district, they're used to seeing the students every day. And they maybe have been teaching for several years. And so this is just an entirely new way to teach. And it requires a real shift in their thought. And so I think one of the challenges is to really take them from being a traditional teacher and help them move to a blended teacher in a way that feels supportive for them, so they don't feel overwhelmed by the whole experience. I think that really is the most important thing.
So what do you do with teachers? Because I'm gonna throw this out there. This is not a question I gave you previously, but what do you do with those teachers that you give them the PD beforehand, and they still are reluctant. They still fight it. They still gravitate towards everything comes through me, and have not sort of grown into their understanding of how a blended learning environment actually works.
So I'll be honest, that hasn't happened, because I think by the time they go through the year with me, that reluctance has dissipated. They might be nervous, but I think that's different from being reluctant in the sense of not really thinking it's a good idea. And so the way that I sort of work on that reluctance is I model the entire year in my professional development, what it will look like, what it'll feel like from a student and from a teacher perspective. So, for example, one of the first things we do is that the teachers take a blended professional development course with me. So they go into Schoology, which is our learning management system, and they would do the same things that the kids would do. They have online discussions, they submit assignments, they do collaborative projects together in maybe a Google Doc. And so they really get to feel what it's like, and they also get to see what's expected and what I think they should be trying to do. So I think that helps to have that experience. And then the other thing I do is, and this is really important too, if for anybody who's giving professional development, I always give at least half of the time for teachers to actually work on their own courses and try these things out for themselves. So for example, if we're learning about a flipped classroom, I may have we may talk about it, we may look at tools, but then half of the PD time is spent actually developing a flipped lesson that they can then try out on their current students. And so they can see how it goes. If it doesn't work, it's just a one-time thing. And so they kind of get confident in trying these different lessons. They come back, we talk about what worked, what didn't work, how come this person's went well and this other person's didn't go well, and what advice can they share, and that kind of thing. So I just keep doing that over and over and over again, building that confidence, helping them to have a course ready to go towards the end of that first year so they don't feel reluctant anymore. In fact, I think most of them just feel really excited. They've been doing it for a year and they just want to sort of get going by the time that year is over, which is great, which is just what I want.
Awesome, awesome. So the online component in the blended learning environment can be anything from software programs to fully designed online courses via an LMS. Mm-hmm. Teachers go about selecting which learning outcome should be addressed online, and what is their process for sort of selecting tools that they should use?
Great question. So I'll start with the first one, which is we talk about how what happens in the classroom in a blended class is just as important as what happens online. And I think sometimes we focus so much on the blended piece and what goes in the online component that we do sometimes forget about the face-to-face. And so I'm glad that you asked that question because it's really important. I walk the teachers through looking at a unit and saying, okay, what would work online? What are you currently doing in the classroom that you don't necessarily have to do in the classroom? Maybe it's reading that the kids are doing, independent work. Maybe they're giving a lecture and they're delivering content, and that can be moved online by creating a video or something like that. Then I ask them, what are the things you love to do in the classroom? What's really engaging? What's hands-on? What's collaborative? Let's leave that in the class. And so, you sort of have to go through your material. And there's some things, like I said, the lecture part that lends itself to going online, to moving online, maybe a review, something like that. And then those face-to-face components that seem obvious. And then there are some activities that could be either. So maybe you could have a discussion in class, or you could have the discussion online. And then it becomes more of a teacher choice. And what the teacher wants to do, or maybe what the kids enjoy. But I do think it's really important that they spend the time on every unit thinking about that. And one of the things my teachers say is that just that experience alone makes their classes, their physical classes, better. Because they've really thought about the most quality piece to keep in their face-to-face class, which I think is really interesting. As far as selecting tools, I teach the teachers about, I used to be a programmer a long time ago. And so I teach the teachers about something called discoverability, which is a software term. And when you're a programmer, you need to design your software, or if you're making an app, you need to design that app in a way that it's discoverable. Nobody should have to read a manual or get instruction in order to figure out how to use it, right? It should be intuitive. So what I tell teachers is you really want to pick tools that have really high discoverability. So spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes playing with it. If you can figure it out, if it makes sense to you, then it's going to make sense to the kids. If you spend 20 or 30 minutes looking at a tool and it's totally confusing, then just move on. There's so many great tools out there that you don't need to be stuck on one that's hard. Do you know what I'm saying?
Cool. So now I want to stay with online. This is important because the majority of teacher education programs just don't focus on teaching teachers how to design and deliver online courses. Yet many of the current K through 12 students will take an online course in college at some point. We are both Schoology ambassadors, and our districts have both adopted Schoology management system. When we talk about implementing an LMS into a blended learning environment, we are talking about designing and delivering an online course. What has been your process in working with teachers in understanding instructional design for online learning, and where do you see online learning going in K through 12 education?
So I 100% agree with you. I think that most of the new teachers that are coming into our district have not had any experience teaching blended, teaching cyber, even learning about it in their classrooms. One of the things I was thrilled, we partner with Westchester University for some of our student teachers, and one of our student teachers got paired with a blended teacher. And I thought that was awesome because she's going to get just some great experience understanding how a blended class would work as a pre-service teacher. So I agree with you. I think that one of the things that is helpful is to look at research and to see what has been proven to be successful in blended and online classes and what has not. Unfortunately, though, having said that, some of the research is, most of the research is college and university based. So we try to take what the research has said at the college and university level and then make it applicable to a high school student. I also look at the teacher's own experiences in a class. So learning from being a student and seeing just little things like some of the universal design principles in terms of color coding certain things or how you lay out certain topics. All of that, by experiencing it as a student, I think really helps a teacher figure out, what works and what doesn't.
Awesome. I know from our district, excuse me, that has been and is still something that we continue to work on in terms of how do you design a course. And part of what we have done thus far, Albert Galeas, instructional technologist, who leads the one-on-one at 2 different locations. He sat down and sort of created a framework for how to do it so teachers can visually sort of see how this works out. Who is to learn more to where it feels more, I guess, intuitive for teachers and not teachers feeling like what I'm doing face to face, I'm doing the same thing online, that it does feel like a different sort of space for students. One of the things that I found was interesting, and I was meeting with some teachers, has the individually assigned aspect to do that, to assign work to students. This teacher said, well, I don't like that. Quite honestly. So I created different color folders. And those color folders represent, let's say, my high flyers, my students that are in the middle, and my students who need that extra help. And she just told her, and putting her students in the groups, saying, oh, you're in a green folder, you're in a red folder, you're in a yellow folder. And had it set up to where, depending on how students were doing, let's say week to week, also looking at other data from NWA, et cetera, students would move up and down the different folders. And I was thinking, that is a great idea. And I love how she actually took ownership of it and started to work with it that way. So I was like, that was really, really cool. So what are some of the successes you have witnessed in your district since transitioning to a blended learning environment?
There's been a lot. You know what's been the most interesting, I think, is, and this is not something I've heard about other than in my own district. I haven't heard people talking about our students. So I survey students every year to see how they're doing in blended learning, what they like, what they don't like, what improvements we can make, that type of thing. And the students every year overwhelmingly say that blended learning classes are less stressful than their traditional classes. And I thought that was really interesting. So I asked some kids, I said, you know, this is really interesting to me. Tell me more. I want to go beyond sort of what's in this survey. Why is this less stressful? And so one of the things they said is, so here in my district, and I think a lot of area districts in Pennsylvania, we're still on a very traditional schedule. So a student could, I'm going to pretend I am an athlete, right? And tonight I have a really big basketball game, okay? And then next period, I go to social studies and my teacher assigns a project or a paper or an assignment that's due tomorrow. And so now I'm freaking out because I got to get to the game and I got to get on the bus and I'm not going to be home till 10:30, and it's very stressful. And so what the students were saying is when their classes are blended, part of blended learning is giving students control over the time and the place and the pace of their learning. So by having that control, it actually makes them feel less stressful because they can control when they do these assignments. It's not, I'm here on Wednesday and by tomorrow this needs to be done. They may have all their assignments for the week and then they get to decide when and where they do these assignments. And so I find that really interesting, and I haven't really heard people talk about that too much, but I think it's a really nice byproduct of doing this, is that, you know, giving the students control. I mean, if you think about it just in your own life, don't you feel better when you have control over things, you know, and it's something that you can actually, you know, you're not reacting to it, but you're controlling it. And so that's how they feel. They feel like when they have more control over their learning, it's actually less stressful. And I think that's true too, even in deciding the path of their learning. Like you said, with the teacher and the different folders, well, wouldn't it be interesting if the kids could actually take that one step further? Maybe they decide which folder they're going to be in. You know, do I need to be in the red folder or the blue folder or whatever, and have a voice in that? That'd be kind of interesting. So I think that student control piece has been a huge success. We've had a lot of we've had some good data that shows that students are actually performing better on some of our common summative exams, showing that they really are learning more deeply and understanding better, which makes sense because I think they're held accountable for a lot more of their learning. And also they have an opportunity to review, to enrich, to go back over material if they need to. And so I think that also helps in their academic performance. And then we've just given kids great flexibility. Because they're only meeting 50% of the time, it's opening up their schedule to take other courses, to add an additional AP, to take a course that has a lab, to do an internship. It just opens up a lot more opportunities for students, both academic and extracurricular. So those are just some of the many benefits I have seen over the last few years.
Awesome, awesome. I know on our end, what has been cool for teachers, they have had students be able to do work that was not, let's say, done during the class.
Yes.
Period. So, like even right now during Christmas break. So let's just say a student for some reason missed 4 assignments between the first of last 9 weeks until I guess it's closed or whatever. Students could go in and do those assignments. The teacher goes into Schoology,
Right.
boom, they see the grade,
Right.
can give the feedback, but you know, it's in the grade book. They can go ahead and put it in our system, and the student gets credit for it. It's also interesting when you talk about kids doing that, because we've had issues where, quite honestly, a teacher is in English class and they're supposed to be doing English work, but they're actually doing work in math class. And so, because they're doing that algebra work, and they're like, we're going to sort of rhythms and expectations of how their classes run.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been awesome to see students, do the work and become sort of adjusted to the self pace.
Yes.
Of it, which for me, wait.
Oh no, I was just going to say, you're right. I haven't even talked about the successes with the teachers. I think the teachers are thrilled that, they feel like their face-to-face time is more meaningful now. They feel like they have a better sense of how a student is doing because they can see their work and their progress online. They have more data that they can use. So if a student does something at home and then the students come in, then the teacher actually has some data to see how they did, earlier in the week, which is great. My teachers say, and this is kind of funny, but they say they love that there's a connection beyond just the classroom. Because in the past, the kids would come in and you'd have them for 50 minutes and then that was it. That was your only connection. But now they can send them in Schoology, they can send them notifications. Hey, don't forget, I forgot to tell you in class, don't forget, next time we meet. They can have those conversations with the kids. They can participate in a discussion online. Maybe it's that evening or, the next day. But the teachers have told me they really feel like they actually know the students better because they have this connection outside just the time they have them in the class. And I think that's a really neat success.
Oh yeah. It's just really awesome. It's just one of those things to where, this won't turn into a commercial for Schoology, but the platform itself, lends itself to what you were talking about, because
right.
We did look at other LMSs before adopting it, and being able to have those discussions, particularly when you're able to create those groups.
Right.
And then have those discussions with students, which we have grade students. So
right.
all of the teachers are in there.
Right.
They're talking to students. They're saying, hey, this project is due on this day, or telling the student, they may put an announcement at 9 o'clock in the morning. When you come to Miss Walker's 4th period class, you will be doing this, or saying, hey, tutoring for SATP tests will take place on this Saturday in this teacher's room,
right?
Which is cool. And I've been in there too. So I've been in there a couple times. Like, hey, let's treat these Chromebooks with a little more care, sort of thing.
Yes.
But it's one of those things to create that sort of community, the collaboration, the communication, really sort of breaks down that barrier of the online environment, which some people talk about can be isolating. Right. So you're able to use that isolation in creating a community.
What's really interesting, Dr. Will? I just had a student yesterday. We had some visitors to our district to come and learn about blended learning, and so we had some students come and talk. And one of the students said the best thing. She said she took a creative writing class. And she said they're supposed to critique each other's work. And she said what they do is they put the work online and then classmates respond to it. And she said, if she had to do that in a classroom, she wouldn't have said anything. Because teenagers, she described it as having, the screen in front of you and feeling a little more comfortable saying things that you might not otherwise say in class. And so she said it's been a really awesome experience that she's gotten she's actually going to major now. I think she's going to major in writing when she goes to college, because she felt like she really grew as a student getting so much feedback from her classmates. And she said it was not just her teacher anymore, but she said you used to turn in a paper, a teacher would give you feedback and that's all you got. But now she can get that feedback from the classmates. So, and then she said she doesn't believe that they would have said the same things if they were face-to-face in a classroom. So I think that's really awesome. Another thing that's been really cool, we have a Japanese teacher who has partnered in Schoology with a class in Japan. And so they have online discussions in both Japanese and English. And that's been an incredibly authentic, amazing experience. Talk about building community. They just talk about everyday things, but the Japanese kids get to practice their Japanese and the English kids get to practice their English, and they go back and forth. And some people may look at it as isolating, but I think you and I would agree that there are great opportunities to build community there too.
Which is important. And, I'm all in. I love your title, Cyber and Blended Learning. That just, when can I get that?
You're the person to say that.
When can I get that title? Because I love, what you're doing at your district, and I would love for our district to do that. I would love for our district to start creating these courses where it doesn't matter what school you attend, what grade level you're in, you as a student can take courses that you are interested in, you're passionate about, as well as up to your aptitude. Like if you're a fifth grader and you're reading at a ninth grade reading level, why should you be in a fifth grade class, which happens all over the country?
Right.
If that student could then take a ninth grade English class.
Right. Yeah.
And, not only get to their level, but to be challenged, to be able to have those conversations, to get access to information and ideas, where they are, and to push them. To me, that's a greater rewarding educational experience for the student.
Right.
And that's where the advantage of online learning is versus traditional sort of face-to-face, because what do you do with those students? Now, normally the school district doesn't have, a lot of those students, but even if you have one, what do you do with that one student?
Right. We have an exact example. We have multiple fifth graders taking seventh grade math, and they're doing it online, which is great. And they're from different buildings, but they're all in the same class, and they have a Downingtown teacher, and it really is providing them great opportunity that they might not otherwise have if they were at their elementary school.
Nice. So before we go, I want your call to action for those schools and districts that are planning to launch their own blended learning initiative.
Well, one of the things that I have learned in doing this is I think people need to be open to the types of teachers that can do this and the types of students. And I'll talk about both. For the type of teacher, I always hear people saying young teachers. And as you and I talked about earlier, I don't think they're coming in with any more knowledge than some of our veteran staff. So I hope that people keep an open mind about this. Some of my best teachers are 3 and 4 years away from retirement. You just need to have someone who's willing to learn, regardless of their age. And also, when you're thinking about blended learning, keep your mind open to different content areas. When I first started, I had a family consumer science teacher who wanted to blend a foods class. And I didn't know how that was going to work, but she said there's a lot of material they give in the classroom about nutrition and measuring and all that stuff. So she was going to blend that part, and then the kids would come in and cook face to face. That's been extremely successful. I've had a music teacher who really wanted to blend his music class because kids couldn't fit it in their schedule. They were taking too many AP classes. And he was able to use things like Finale and Smart Music to blend his music class. And so they can record themselves singing or playing instruments or doing other things at home, and they don't sort of lose that classroom time. So I've really learned to keep my mind open to the possibilities. We have an art teacher that is blending. So the kids are working independently on their artwork and then coming in classroom time for critiquing and that kind of thing. And then as far as students, I think that school districts need to keep an open mind about the type of student that blended learning is for. So many times, I think people assume, they need to be high flyers. They need to have good time management skills. And I say, it's our job as educators they don't have time management skills, how else are they going to learn them? Let's give them an opportunity to do this and show them how they can develop those skills. And I also emphasize that a struggling learner can benefit just as much from blended learning as perhaps a high flyer could, by being able to work at his own pace, by being able to review the material, and so on. So I would just say, really keep an open mind to who this is good for, because I think it's good for a lot more people than we might think.
Awesome. Thank you again, Kristie, for being a guest on the show. It was awesome to have you here. I would love to visit your school, but unfortunately,
yes.
I don't know who's going to pay for the ticket. To check it out. But I would like to see it, because my goal, as more Chromebooks come into our district, as we expand Schoology, is to create that is so ingrained, not only with the way sort of teachers teach, but via systems, how teachers collaborate online and offline, until the point to where if you have turnover, whether it's at the district level or instructional technologists or the principal, even teachers themselves, your initiative doesn't take, 5 steps back. That is able to continue to grow because the culture is there.
Yes.
And, that's my focus now, having had, 1 year of experience in working with teachers, and they were a fine oil machine too. Because even my naysayers, they were like, once they did that 9 weeks exam and it was graded in Schoology, and they were like, I don't have to grade 150 papers.
Exactly.
They were like, I'm sold. What else can I do?
Yes. Yeah.
And so everyone jumped on board. And unfortunately, I had some teachers move on to other opportunities, and I am starting sort of over from scratch. And it's like, okay, so let's get this, let's rebuild, let's get the culture going. It's different. I don't so much on training as opposed to development. I love to develop so they understand their why, so they understand their purpose, so they understand the strengths that they bring to the table, and not just push this button, oh, put everything in the Schoology.
Right.
To really become dynamic educators with technology. So that's what I'm trying to, get going.
I love that. And one last thing is, I have had teachers who, for example, I had a blended teacher who became a principal. So, but what's great is I could take her blended class and just switch it over to the next person. And, so that's one of the benefits, is the material is there. Once you build it, it's there, and you can use it and share it, and it gets a little bit easier.
Oh yeah. It's all good. So thank you again for being a guest.
Thanks for having me
on the show. It was awesome. As always, people, invest in you. EDU, this is going up on LinkedIn. It's going to be on my blog. Hey, it's streaming now on YouTube, so it's going to be on YouTube. I'm going to pop this on SoundCloud as well. And I have some upcoming guests. We're going to be talking about blended learning. And Eric Schenniger is coming on the show. He kind of joked me like,
oh, he's great.
So yeah. That's a friend. So, we're going to really try to do it up this year and do some great things with the show, have dynamic conversations. And we're starting, we have Kristie here. So, of course. So people, have yourself a great one. And I'll see you to next time.
Bye.